Thank you very much for being here for what I hope is going to be a meaningful and important discussion. As a nation, we talk about a lot of issues, but one issue that we don't spend enough time on is the reality of life for senior citizens and veterans in this country. And by the way, here we are on Veterans Day, and I want to salute all of the men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend our country. We thank you very much. The truth is that here in Iowa and in Vermont and all over this country, as we speak, there are senior citizens by the millions trying to figure out how they survive on $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year Social Security. There are seniors who are lonely. There are seniors who are depressed. There are seniors, in fact, who are turning to a significant degree to alcohol and drugs to ease their loneliness and ease their pain. There are seniors in this country, and I know I've talked to many in Vermont and around this country, who cannot afford the prescription drugs they desperately need. And they are literally cutting their pills in half, which is not a good thing to do. So what we're going to do today is talk about the reality of life for seniors, for veterans, and then we're going to come up with some ideas as to how we can improve that situation. And one thing, let me be very clear about, is we got Republicans out there who want to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. You got a president who ran here in Iowa and throughout this country, he said, I'm a different type of Republican. You remember that? Oh, I'm not going to cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. He lied. Take a look at his budget. That is exactly what he has done. We didn't let him get away with it, but that is what he wanted to do. Talk to Mitch McConnell, and I will give McConnell credit for at least being honest and come forward and say, yes, we need tax breaks for billionaires, but we have to cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. We will never allow that to happen. In fact, instead of cutting Social Security, we're going to expand benefits for those who are on Social Security, especially the lowest income people. And we are going to make sure that everybody in this country has health care as a human right, not a privilege. Now, Donald Trump runs around the country saying that Bernie Sanders wants to destroy Medicare for seniors. I will not shock anybody here to tell you Donald Trump is lying. I know you're all shocked to hear that. That is the case. This is what we want to do for seniors and for the American people in terms of Medicare for all. Right now, if you are a lower income senior, the likelihood is that you are having a difficult time getting the dental care that you need. You have seen, and I have seen, seniors who don't have teeth in their mouth, which is not a good thing, unable to digest their food, may get infections because of poor dental care. Under Medicare for All, we expand Medicare to cover dental care, to cover hearing aids, to cover eyeglasses. All right? You and I have met seniors who simply cannot afford the hearing aids. Hearing aids are expensive. That's a fact. And many seniors cannot afford hearing aids. Think about being 85, 90 and not being able to talk to your kids, to talk to your friends because you can't hear what they are saying. We can do a little bit better than that in the richest country in the history of the world. All right? So here is what we are talking about in terms of health care. We are expanding Medicare to cover hearing aids, they cover dental care, they cover eyeglasses, and home health care. Home health care. You have talked to, and I have talked to, families where senior citizens wanted to stay in their homes, but they needed help doing some cooking or making the beds or just helping out with a bath or whatever it may be. But they can't get their help. They're forced to go into a nursing home, and very often that does not work out well. That's not what people want. They would like to stay home. So we're expanding Medicare to cover home health care. And by the way, under our proposal, Medicare for All, plan that I wrote, because we're going to take on the greed and corruption of the pharmaceutical industry, all right? And we will no longer allow them, in some cases, to charge the American people 10 times more for the same exact medicine being sold in Canada or in other countries. Under our plan, nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for all the prescription drugs they need. And how do we pay for all of that? We pay for it by ending the profiteering that currently takes place. Last year, the healthcare industry, drug companies and the insurance companies, made over $100 billion in profit. You got that? $100 billion, charging us the highest prices in the world for healthcare and by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And they're going to take 1% of their profits, it's $1 billion, and they put it on TV ads in Iowa and around the country, and in magazine ads, telling you how bad Medicare for All is. Understand what this debate is about in terms of healthcare. It's not about healthcare. Nobody can defend a system in which we spend twice as much per person as the people of any other country, while 87 million are uninsured or underinsured, and 500,000 people go bankrupt every year because of medically related illnesses. Can you imagine somebody coming down, being diagnosed with cancer, having to deal with cancer, deal with heart disease, deal with Alzheimer's in the family, and then on top of that, family goes bankrupt because there's an outrageous medical bill that they cannot afford to pay. So we are going to pay for Medicare for All by eliminating the profiteering of the insurance companies and the drug companies and the incredible administrative waste because of the complexity of the current system. We're wasting hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars a year because we have many, many thousands of separate health insurance plans. You got a $5,000 deductible. You got a $7,000 deductible. You got this, you got that, you got that. They're all different. It has to be administered. What our plan is pretty simple. You walk into any doctor you want. You walk into any hospital you want. You don't take out your wallet. You don't take out your credit card. It is paid for out of the general tax base. And because we do it in a progressive way, overwhelming majority of the American people will pay substantially less for health care than they are paying right now. That is called a civilized health care system in a democratic society. Okay, what I want to do now is we're going to open this thing up for your thoughts. I want to hear from you. Just talk from the heart. Don't worry about the 19 television cameras that are behind you. All right, just because, again, this is an issue. Whatever you say here today, mark my words, there are hundreds of thousands of people saying, yeah, that's exactly what's going on in my family. And let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do about it. So what I want to do is I have some folks I want to call on first, and then we'll open it up to anybody for your questions, your comments. Fred Trujillo. Fred is a veteran and Central Iowa Public Employees Council union member from Des Moines. Fred, where are you? Right here. Okay.
Good afternoon. I was privileged to serve in the United States Coast Guard for 4 years. Very proud of the service
Fred,
that I...
hold that mic a little bit closer.
Certainly. Was very proud of the service that I was able to provide. The last 2 years, my primary job was to keep drugs from coming into the United States through the Chesapeake Bay up into Baltimore. Unfortunately, several small boat units like mine in the Coast Guard, the entire crews were killed trying to do just that. So we did lose people, and it was hard. Right now, I'm very fortunate. I'm a public sector employee with the city of Des Moines, have been for almost 30 years. It's a good paying union job, and I look forward to retiring in the very near future. The problem that I'm facing is I have pre-existing conditions. I have the VA bill to cover mine, but my wife does too. We both have Lyme disease, and it's very difficult and very expensive to treat. And I'm ready to retire, but we can't because my wife can't retire. She's probably gonna have to work another 10 to 14 years in order to maintain health care so that she can live.
So you and your wife are both ready to retire after a lifetime of work, but you can't because you're both dealing with Lyme disease, which is a very serious illness. Explain to us the kind of medical bills or the issues you're dealing with for your wife or yourself in terms of Lyme's disease.
Lyme disease is not recognized by every state in the union. There's not a single doctor here that will treat us. We have to go to Missouri. We went down just for a routine examination. Being how our insurance didn't cover it, it was $1,800 for the two of us to be seen that day. That's out of pocket. And fortunately, you know, we do both have a good paying job and we had savings, but that's $1,800 that came out of our savings account. If we don't have insurance, the insurance does cover antibiotics, which is great. It's a generic, $5 a month. So that's very helpful, but there's so many other things that we need. Our eyesight changes tremendously, even over a 6-month period of time. So
Lyme disease impacts vision?
Exactly. Mental acuity, physical abilities, body aches. My wife wanted to be here today. She's been in bed for the last 2 days. She just feels absolutely terrible because we started a new treatment. They told us that she would feel bad. She chose to, I chose not to. And she indeed has been feeling really bad. And not just physically, but it's just the mental part too. It's just taxing. We've both been fighting it for a better part of 12 years. And with little or no help here in Iowa, again, we have to go to Missouri or Wisconsin or Minnesota. The doctors here refuse to believe long-term exposure to Lyme disease is a constant struggle.
Fred, thanks very much for sharing that. Sue Bathkey is a retired farmer who became an IT worker after her husband's passing. She is also a cancer survivor who was laid off while she was going through her treatment. Sue, where are you?
I'm back here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. He kind of told my story, but that's okay. As he said, when I graduated from college, I married my high school sweetheart. He was a farmer. It was in the early 80s, and we found ourselves in the midst of the farm crisis. Some of you might remember that. He took a job off the farm doing grain building construction, and he was killed on the job. So I had to kind of pick things up and decide what I was going to do with the rest of my life. So I went back and I got a degree here in Iowa to be a computer programmer. And I went to work here in Des Moines and worked about 15 years. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2005. And we were very fortunate. I remarried. This is my second husband. And we were very fortunate at the time. I had very good health insurance. So honestly, I don't even really remember, how much it cost. And I had a good job. So those were just things that really didn't impact our lives at the time. I could compare that to my sister who had gone through breast cancer herself 5 years earlier. She didn't have good insurance. And at the time, tamoxifen was extraordinarily expensive. I think the senator knows about this because he took some women to Canada to buy that drug. By the time I was diagnosed, the price had come down and there were generics available, so that was very helpful for us. Since after that period, I was continuing treatment, and in 2011, I was laid off. I was 55 years old, and we found ourselves with health insurance. We could go on COBRA, but it's twice as expensive and you don't have an income. So that was really difficult. And so in the years since, I've kind of gone back and forth between being unemployed and doing IT short-term contract work. So you have insurance there, and it changes all the time, and you're always having to keep up with what's covered, what's not covered, and it's so time-consuming and so frustrating. And I just really wish we had had Medicare for all when that happened. It would have been such an easier, when something like that happens in your life, it would have been easier to have that as a safety net than to just have to be out on your own trying to figure out where you're going to get health insurance, because like they said, you have a pre-existing condition, you have to have health insurance. So that's kind of where we are right now. I'm unemployed currently. I do have a position coming up next week to start, and when I am unemployed, my husband will work at Walmart. A good part of that is because of they have health insurance, and you can get on right away and things like that. So
what does it mean to be struggling financially and not to have the quality health insurance that you need?
Well, honestly, I have to say, Senator, I'm a lot like the man over there. We had good savings. You know, we had lived pretty frugally, and so we had good savings we could rely on, but it does hurt to take money out of your savings that you thought was going to go for your retirement just to pay for your COBRA, to pay for your out-of-pocket. Since then, every insurance that we've had has been high deductible and has had that huge out-of-pocket that we have to pay before the insurance company even starts to pay. I think it's like, what, $6,000 we have to pay out of pocket every year.
Deductible is $6,000?
Yes. And so lots of times we just don't go to the doctor, honestly.
You don't go to the doctor?
No.
All right, this is a story, Sue, that I have heard many, many times. And it's a story that people work their whole lives and they try to save up some money for their retirement, all right? And here's the truth. In America today, about half the people, you are what, 55, Sue?
No, I'm a little older than that.
All right, we won't tell. We won't tell.
I was 55 a few years ago.
All right, me too. Probably a longer time ago than you were 55.
No,
but, all right, but here's the story. I want everybody to consider this. And we see this time and time again. People work their whole lives. They want to save up some money for their retirement. Maybe they want to save up some money to leave to their kids. And yet you get older, you don't have the kind of quality insurance that you need. When you get older, it is more likely that you're going to come down with an illness. And then you're going to spend a fortune. And then you're sitting there in your back of your mind wondering, okay, how am I going to make it when I retire? Social Security is fine, but I'm not going to get enough to live the kind of retirement that I want. Over the many years, as you know, corporations have been cutting back on pensions. Most Americans don't have pensions. So that is the situation, as I understand it, where you and your husband now find yourself, Sue. And it's the story of millions of people. And I kind of think that if you work your whole life, you should be able to put away a few dollars for your own retirement or to leave to your kids and not have to spend it on outrageously high medical bills. And, you know, what Sue is talking about also ties into the issue of medical debt. There are some people who cannot pay off their medical bills. And if you're late in paying off your medical bills, what happens? That's right. Who said that? That's right. Have you experienced that?
No, I pay my bills.
All right. But there are some people who don't have the money to pay their bills on time. And then your credit score is shot. And then the interest rates that you got to pay to borrow money to get a car goes way up. So it's where the poor get poorer and struggle even more. So I want to reiterate that the stories we heard from Fred and Sue are stories that do not take place in other major countries on earth. People do not have to deplete their life savings in order to pay a medical bill. So, Sue, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Robert Morrison is a retired member of IAMAW Local 1010. He was forced into early retirement when Siemens closed their factory. Robert, where are you? There you go.
Here,
Thanks for being with us, Robert.
Thanks, Senator. Yeah, my name's Robert Morrison. I'm from Burlington, Iowa. I was forced into early retirement at age 64. I lost my job of 31 years. Siemens closed our factory in Burlington, Iowa, and shipped our jobs overseas. I'm one of the lucky ones. I do have a pension. I'm taking a little bit of a hit on my Social Security by drawing it at 64. I'm a lot more fortunate than a lot of my coworkers that had to start over at the bottom rung of the ladder in a new company at 50, 55, 56. And it's terrible. It's terrible that these companies can come in and take our jobs overseas and still get federal tax dollars. I can't explain how bad it is, Senator.
Robert, I suspect, are you still in touch with a lot of your former coworkers?
Yes.
Okay, and a lot of lives, I imagine, were disrupted by that?
Yes, devastated.
Okay, and people who are in their 50s who have maybe worked for Siemens for decades are now taking jobs at a lot lower wage than they had at Siemens. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, let's just deal with that. That's a little different issue. It's not a healthcare issue per se, although I don't know if you wanted to say anything about healthcare, but...
Well, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get back to you, but this is another issue. We have lost over 4 million good-paying jobs as a result of disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China. Agreements that were made behind closed doors by CEOs who could care less about Robert and his coworkers. And if they can make a nickel more by moving to where did they go, to Mexico or to China? Where did Siemens go?
They took our jobs to the Czech Republic, Varadero, India, and a non-union plant in North Carolina.
Okay. If they can make a nickel more by shutting down a plant, that is exactly what they will do. No concern that people like Robert made the profits for that company, built that company. They can make a nickel more, they're off to a non-union state where they can hire people at low wages. They're off to China where you get people to work for $1, $2 an hour, Mexico, wherever. All right, and that is something that we have got to change. We need a trade policy. Trade is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for farmers. It's not a bad thing for workers if the trade agreement is structured in a way that benefits ordinary people, not just the CEOs of large corporations. All right?
Yeah.
So, Robert, did you want to say a word on health care as well?
Well, yeah, I was lucky. Our union negotiated 6 months severance pay and 6 months of insurance. So that got me down to July, and I was able to pick up a COBRA policy. But now I have to write a check to Siemens for $718 every month to keep insurance on myself. And now I got a notice the other day that the premiums are going up after the first of the year. So this is just rubbing salt in the wounds of people like me.
So you are now paying close to $10,000 a year. Is that correct? $700 a month?
Yeah.
Okay. And what impact does that have on your family and on your retirement and so forth?
Well, it's less money that I can spend on my family, taking them out for dinner, taking them on vacations and stuff like that. It's tightening your belt another notch. And it's terrible.
All right. Okay. Well, Robert, thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
When we talk about Medicare for all, I think we don't fully appreciate what that will mean for the average American. Just think for a moment. We've already heard 3 stories. We're going to hear more in a minute. What will it mean in terms of reducing stress when you can go to the doctor, you can go to the hospital if you have to. You don't have to worry about the bill. All right? You can, in fact, leave your job if you're not happy there and go out and get a new job and not worry about whether or not you're going to have health insurance or not. You could be a small business person and know that all of your workers are covered, and you don't have to spend half of your profits on providing health care for your workers. Think about what a huge burden of stress is being relieved when everybody in this country will have health care as a human right. And again, I know some people think this is a radical idea. It is not a radical idea. It exists in Canada. It exists in Germany. It exists in France. It exists in the UK. It exists in Finland, in Denmark, in Sweden, in Norway. It exists in virtually every major country on earth. We are the exception to the rule. and the kind of anxiety and stress that people live under. We heard already today, I think Sue was saying it. Well, I'm getting sick, I may not be able to go to the doctor. That's the bad thing. We lose 30,000 people a year because they don't go to the doctor when they should. When you're sick, you should feel absolutely free to go to the doctor, not worry about the bill. Okay, Deana Peterson, her husband has early onset Alzheimer's, and wow, that is a growing issue in this country. Deana, where are you? Thank you for being here.
My husband first went in for testing at age 52. We continued doctoring, and then at age 62, they determined that it was early onset Alzheimer's. He's 68 years old now, and he's in memory care. Finding care for him is very difficult. And I've also found that dealing with the disease really is bad enough as it is, but trying to deal with finding good care for him has been even worse. Respite care is basically non-existent. Care to be brought into the home is $25 to $35 an hour. The nursing home care is thousands, and no one can afford that option, at least for very long. I work full-time, and I drive 100 miles every day round trip to and from my job because I can't retire and stay home to try to help care for him to be able to keep him home. I need the health insurance for myself. I've also found that in dealing with the care facilities, they say that they're memory care, but they're not maybe really memory care because they can pick and choose who they want to care for and who they don't. If a resident shows any kind of signs that's typical for Alzheimer's, that's an issue. They can get kicked out. They're sent to a psych ward at a hospital to be medicated. And I found out the hard way that if you are asked to leave one of the care facilities, in our area anyway, one corporation owns most of them. So to find another facility to be able to take them is very, very difficult because they all share the same information. And I think, you know, it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to take care of our families, spend our time with our families as we should, instead of spending our energy trying to navigate the current healthcare system.
All right. Alzheimer's is a growing crisis in this country. It's striking families all over America. Deana, talk a little bit about the financial implications of what it means now. You're the only income in your family now. Your husband obviously is not earning money. What does it mean to try to take care of your husband, take care of yourself? Do you have other kids as well?
I'm just responsible for he and I, yeah.
And what does that mean financially for you, who's now the sole breadwinner in the family?
It's very scary. I mean, you know, when you try to, you know, to live frugally, as others have said, and try to save a little something, in a very short period of time, everything that you've worked for and saved for is gone. I mean, then I'll probably end up on assistance, and my husband probably will be too, because you have to spend everything that you have in order to have care, and when it's gone, it's just gone.
So what you're saying is your husband worked his entire life?
Yes, he did. He farmed.
He's a farmer, and you worked your entire life?
Yes.
And what you're nervous about is at the end of the day, when you're ready to retire, you're not going to have anything in the bank?
No, I won't have anything. In fact, I've mentioned to my kids, I hope they redo their basement nicely because I'll probably be in it.
Okay. All right. Deana, thank you very, very much. Okay, what I want to, it's the same story. We've heard Deana tell it, and others have told it. Alzheimer's is a terrible illness, and we need to put more money into research to understand the causes of that illness and try to be more effective in treating it. But families should not have to find themselves in financial duress. And what we're hearing from is older workers today. And in the back of your mind, Deana, correct me if I'm wrong, you are thinking about the day when you're not going to be able to work anymore.
Exactly.
All right, and we all are. There comes a day where you can't work anymore. And what happens then if you've spent down all of the money? This is the really horrible thing. People work their whole lives in order to put aside a little bit of money so that you can retire. And then you hit with Alzheimer's, or you hit with cancer, whatever it may be, and you got to spend it down, and then you're thinking, what happens to me when I'm 70, 75, 80 years of age? Where's the money going to come for me to live with a shred of dignity? And that's a story, what Deana was saying, what Sue was saying, what others have been saying here this morning. This is a story shared by millions of people. Okay, let's open it up right now. Be happy to hear from anybody who would like to just say a few words. We got the mics here, Misty. Gentleman right here. Just give us your name, sir, and stand up if you could.
Nice to meet you, Senator, or should I say
Senator's fine.
the President. My name's Rick McDonald. This is my wife, Patty. We are originally from Iowa. We now live in Oregon. What I would like to know is, could you describe, in this health care for all, can you describe the resistance that you would expect to have? And, from corporations, lobbyists, Congress, and how will you counter that?
Good. There is a reason why the United States is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all, and why we spend twice as much per capita, and why last year the healthcare industry made over $100 billion in profit. And the reason is that these entities, and I'm talking about the insurance companies and the drug companies and the medical equipment suppliers, are enormously powerful entities. For example, over the last 20 years, the pharmaceutical industry alone has spent billions of dollars on lobbying and campaign contributions. Go to the internet and find out the candidates or the members of Congress or the governors who have received money from the pharmaceutical industry, and they're all over the place. All right? And the result of all of that is, in terms of the pharmaceutical industry, they can charge you any price they want for the medicine that you use. You can walk into a pharmacy tomorrow and the price of the medicine you've been taking for 20 years is double, and you ask the pharmacist why, and he said they can do it. They can, and they do it. They engage in collusion and in price fixing to jack prices up. As I think Sue mentioned, in terms of tamoxifen, which is a widely prescribed breast cancer drug, almost 20 years ago, I took women with breast cancer from northern Vermont over the Canadian border, and we bought tamoxifen for 1/10 of the price. And just a few months ago, unbelievably, I was in the Midwest in Detroit with people who are dealing with diabetes, who take insulin. And we went across the Canadian border a few miles, 10, 15 miles, to buy insulin at 1/10 of the price. Same company, same product. Why? Because in Canada, they do what every other country does. They regulate the prices that the drug companies can charge. In this country, because the drug companies regulate the Congress, it's not the Congress that regulates the drug companies, they can charge you anything they want. So you ask me, the opposition? They made $100 billion in profit last year. 1% of that is $1 billion. 1% of their profits. They're going to take that billion or hundreds of millions of dollars, they're going to put it on TV ads here in Iowa. You're already seeing those ads. And understand those ads that tell you how bad Medicare for all is. They'll probably start attacking me personally. Understand who is paying for those ads. Those ads are paid for by people who made $100 billion in profit, CEOs, who make many, many millions of dollars a year in compensation, charging us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs and the health care that we have. They will fight tooth and nail. They will fight tooth and nail to protect their outrageous profits. They will have think tanks. You're going to see people on television tell you how bad an idea is, how bad Medicare for all is. Understand who pays those people, who contributes to those think tanks. You're going to see newspaper ads. You'll hear radio ads. There'll be magazine ads. You have pundits on television, corporate television, telling, oh my goodness, so difficult, so hard to do Medicare for all. So we are taking on an enormously powerful entity, and that is why we are the only major country on earth. But the time is now. There's too much suffering in this country. Too many people are uninsured, underinsured, going bankrupt because of this dysfunctional and cruel healthcare system. We're going to take them on, and we are going to defeat them, and we're going to guarantee healthcare to all people as a human right. Thank you. All right, I got a woman right here, Misty. Stand up and just face. Okay, here, turn over there.
Oh, boy.
Don't be nervous.
Hello, Senator Sanders. My name is Frida Micklin. We live in Colorado, so I guess there's lots of people here from out of state. I think no matter what happens from this point forward, that everybody should stop and take a breath and appreciate that before you raised this issue 4 years ago, the idea of health care as a right in this country was not an accepted idea, and now it is.
Yes.
So thank you for that. But having said that, when we look at what's happened with Senator Warren, everybody said, well, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? So she came out with how she's going to pay for it. And since then, people have said, well, those numbers just don't work. It's impossible. And it's good to say we're going to stop the medical companies from profiteering, but I would say the critics will say, well, that's just a general statement. If you say specifically, how do we pay for this?
Well, we have outlined, that's a good question, and let me just say this. How do you pay for health care right now? Do you have health insurance right now?
Yes, sir.
How much a month are you paying in premiums?
My husband's a doctor, he works for a big hospital.
Okay, who wants to talk to me about how much we pay for premiums right now? Anybody? Yes, sir. Okay, hundreds of dollars a month. Who else? Yes, sir. $800 a month. That's close to $10,000 a year for premium. Who said 800? Okay, 800 times 12 is 9,600. That's premiums. You got co-payments? You got deductibles? You got out-of-pocket expenses? All right. That's how you're paying for it right now. And I got a little bit tired. And you're right, we need to know how we're going to pay for it. But sometimes in that discussion, the opponents of Medicare for All forget to tell us how we're paying for it right now. We're paying it out of people's hides right now. I've talked to people who are paying $1,500 a month in premiums. And then they have huge out-of-pocket expenses because they have huge deductibles. Who else wants to talk a little bit about premiums? Yes, ma'am. Stand up if you could, please. Misty, get the mic right behind you.
Family of 5, and we pay.
Hold that mic.
We're a family of 5, and we pay $1,800 a month.
All right. That is almost $24,000 a year in premiums. You got any deductibles?
$2,000 each
Okay.
person, $4,000.
Okay, let's go.
As a
Hold it.
family.
You want to know how we're going to pay for them, ma'am? All right, she's paying 20. Correct me if I'm wrong here. You're paying close to $24,000 a year for a family of 5 in premiums. If there are illnesses in the family, sometimes there are, sometimes there are, it could be up to another $10,000 with a deductible. Takes you up to $34,000. You got prescription drug costs in the family?
Yes.
Okay, and you got out-of-pocket expenses in the family?
Yes.
And you a middle-class family?
Yes.
All right, there you go. I don't know exactly. It'll depend on the amount of sickness in the family or so forth. This woman is paying tens of thousands of dollars a year. How are we paying for that? Where are the TV ads out there saying that maybe it's a little bit crazy for a middle-class family to pay $25,000 a year for health care? Truth is, median family right in the middle of the American economy, makes about $60,000 a year. That family's paying $12,000 a year. 20% of their income before taxes. How's that for paying for health care? Is that a good way? Now, Senator Warren and I both support the legislation that I wrote. And that is the only way we go forward to guarantee quality health care to all people and save the average person money. She has a different way to fund it than I do. I think mine's a little bit better. She will probably argue with me. All right? But The only way we are going to provide quality health care for all is to end the profiteering and to end the administrative nightmare of wasting hundreds of billions of dollars on bureaucracy. Okay? Okay, I want to, yes, ma'am, right here. Stand up, get a mic, hold on, don't say a word. It will be lost to posterity. Yeah, okay, look at me here. Turn around because I want the cameras to see you too. All right, but, yeah, all right, I know. Halfway around. Okay. There you go. Okay. Your name
Hi,
is?
Senator Sanders. One of the things I'd like to bring up
Your
that
name
I
is?
haven't...
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Jennifer Giro.
Jennifer.
I'm a combat vet. I served in Afghanistan in 2013,
Thank you for your service,
2014.
Jennifer.
Thank you. One of the things I'd like to bring up is for people like myself who, I'm not just a combat vet, I also have a son who is autistic, bipolar, has Tourette's syndrome, has a venous angioma in his left frontal lobe, and a seizure disorder. Privatization is the nightmare that we're all facing. Now they're looking to privatize the VA. How are we going to combat that, Senator Sanders?
Elect me president. They ain't going to privatize the VA. You're looking at a former chairman of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. And I sat down with all of the veterans organizations, the American Legion, the DAV, the VFW, Vietnam vets, the more recent vets organizations, to work on what turned out to be the most comprehensive veterans legislation in the modern history of this country. That's what the VFW called it. We only got 56 votes in the Senate. I needed 60 votes. We only got 2 Republicans to support it. But if elected president, we're going to take that legislation, we're going to build on it, we're going to fight all efforts to privatize the VA, okay? We're going to finally provide the staffing. There are some 50,000 vacancies within the VA right now. That's doctors that we need, nurses that we need, other medical personnel that we need. All right, and we're going to expand VA coverage for all veterans. We're going to make it easier for veterans to get into the system and get the quality care that they need. Look, you know, we may argue as a democracy about the wisdom of this or that war, but I hope that there is no disagreement that for the men and women who put their lives on the line doing their duty and defending our country, they deserve the best quality care that we can provide them, and as president, I intend to do that. Yep, I see a gentleman, Misty, where's Misty going? Okay, I don't know if you're able to stand or not. If you can't, then don't, okay. Just hold that mic close to your mouth and give us your name, please.
I'm James Temple, and start on a personal note. I grew up in Plattsburgh Air Force Base in New York.
I know
and,
that.
I remember from when you were a mayor in Burlington on the other side of the
right.
Lake Champlain, yep. And following you for since then. And just wanted to say, after 20 years, I was a software developer and got laid off and recovering from a stroke, and I've also had heart disease and been emergency care 5 times the past 2 years, and thankfully I have really good health insurance from, I work for the city, Des Moines, but the COBRA coverage is going to run out next year, and I'm quite a ways from being able to get onto Medicare. I'm mid-50s, and being able to get Medicare could literally be a lifesaver. Without it, I have a wife and have a daughter, but we would be devastated already if I didn't have good insurance. And then also already started drawing down my retirement that I was expecting to do custodial, 15 years from now. So by the time I reach retirement, I don't know what will happen with, because without Medicare, I don't know.
Well, James, let me say,
wiped out. That's all.
let me pick up on James. So how old are you, James? In mid-50s?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be 54 next month.
One of the way we are going to transition in Medicare for all is very simple. And despite what my critics will tell you, it is the easiest way to provide universal health care. Right now, as you know, eligibility, James, for Medicare is 65. So in the first year, we're going to expand Medicare, as I mentioned earlier, and then we're going to lower the eligibility age to 55. You will be eligible. Whole lot of people in this country who are 55, 58, 60, man, they would be overjoyed to know that they can suddenly get into Medicare. And the second year, we lower it to 45, then to 35. Fourth year, everybody's in. That's about it. So if you want universal health care, that is the simplest and easiest way to do it. Let me just, we'll talk about anything people want to talk about, but I want to maybe focus a bit, if we could. There are millions of seniors in this country who are trying to make it on $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year Social Security. That is their sole source of income. A whole lot of people in this country, that's it. That's all they get is a Social Security check, which is inadequate. I myself cannot really understand how somebody can make it on $12,000 or $13,000 a year when you're 85 years of age. I don't know. I don't know how you pay for your medicine. I don't know how you keep your house warm. I don't know how you buy the groceries that you need. I don't know how you can do that on something like $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year. Anybody want to talk about that issue? Okay, I see you. All right, let me start with this, and then we'll go to you. Okay, we got Misty. We got two folks right here. If you can stand up, that's great. If you can't, that's okay too. Okay.
Well, stumbled up a little bit. Hi, Senator Sanders. I'm Don Davis from Indianola, and you know me as Indianola from the campaign trail.
Right.
I've been fortunate to have been on Medicare for about 30 years because of a debilitating neurological disorder. My wife and I celebrate our 25th anniversary. She retired as a school teacher and had to take her Social Security early with the pension. We live on less than $27,000 a year.
The two of you.
The two of us. We live on my sister's farm. She graciously gives us a house to live in, but we work around the farm and things, but we're still struggling month to month. It's costing an average of about $500 a month with Medicare for us to pay co-pays. We have no credit rating. We have a predatory card.
So you're living on $27,000 and you're spending $6,000 a year just on co-pays.
And then that doesn't cover the medications. I have a medication I've been on for 20 years, Neurontin. Gabapentin is they just doubled the price, tripled it actually in most cases of that. It used to be a tier 1 $5 copay. I now have to spend $57 for a 3-month supply. And that's not even using my Medicare Part D, that's going on to GoodRx and downloading a coupon. So my medications alone cost around $100 a month. My wife's are about $50, and that's the copays. So we're spending, a quarter of our income to keep up. I ran last year for county supervisor. I won't do it again. It's a lot of energy, as I'm sure you know. But I heard these stories from constituents in our rural county.
So bottom line is, right now, may I ask you how old you are?
I will be 60 in 2 days.
Okay. So you and your wife are living on $27,000 a year, and you're spending about, as I understand it, 1/4 of that for health care.
Yes, sir.
All right, ma'am, that's how you pay. That's how we're paying for health care in America today. And let's talk about that issue. All right, I'm prepared to tell you how we're going to pay for, Medicare for all. But I think we should focus a little bit on the absurdity that people who are close to retirement are paying a quarter of their limited incomes on health care. That is cruel, and that is not what should be going on in this country. Thank you very much for sharing that. Yes, sir.
Hello, Senator Sanders. My name is Nathaniel Gavronsky, and I am a constituent advocate. I work with this stuff all the time. I am also CMS certified. I am also on disability, and there's SSI and there's SSDI, and there's some differences with that people don't really understand. I have clients in 17 states, a lot of them trying to get on disability, and they're 3 to 4 years into it. 5 of them have died because of the time it takes. Also, there's 42 USC 402, Disabled Adult Child Code. If someone is born with autism or Down syndrome or something like that, and one of their parents aren't disabled, then they have to go on SSI, which is only $700. If a parent is disabled or dead, they would get the full benefit. Neither one will will get that far, and then their ability to work is impossible. I'm unemployed. I do what I do for free because the people I work with can't give me any money, and I'm spending everything I've got to help people, and I have an estate that likes what I do and is funding me somewhat. But the time it takes for these people to get help is ridiculous.
And many of them die before they
Many
get
of them die, and then there needs to be fixed, we're on fixed incomes, they should have fixed expenses. Look at it this way, the utilities here in Iowa are going up 25% twice in 1 year. That's 50% increase. That my mom's house, who's also on disability, she can no longer afford to keep the heat on, and her pipes freeze every winter. She goes a month and a half sometimes without running water. One of your staffers, Victoria, is going to sit down with me and go over some of this stuff. She's really, really great. So I want to thank you for your staff, the best staff so far in the caucuses. But I really need, with all my clients that I'm working with across the country, there's so much that I want to bring up to you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for raising the issue, which we don't talk enough about, and that is people with disabilities. And what the gentleman just said is absolutely right, is that it is so complicated, it is so long, that the system allows people to die before they even get their disability benefits. All right, let's stay on people struggling on Social Security or other benefits for a moment. Anyone have anything? Yes, sir. Misty?
Senator Sanders, welcome back to Iowa.
Thank you.
I've been involved. My name is Ron Hurd. I live in Urbandale. I've been involved in the affordable housing industry for over 35 years. And we talk about how do people with low incomes pay for groceries and heat and Medicare and their insurance premiums and their prescription drugs. It is a true challenge. And the only way that I've experienced that kind of stuff is with working with people that are in assisted housing, either Section 8 subsidized housing or project-based rent assistance, or what I consider to be one of the best programs that was ever created, the low-income housing tax credit program, because your rent doesn't go up every time your income goes up. And I'm very proud that you wrote the damn bill. And today is actually the first time that I've ever heard you explain the phase-in on how we're going to pay for Medicare. I have long been a proponent of lowering the age of eligibility to 55 years old. But I think the thing that the politicians aren't talking about is that there is a premium for Medicare. I pay a premium. I'm 65. I don't have full retirement age, so I write the check out every 3 months for my Medicare premium. And I can tell you, thank God, my premium costs are good. My medical expenses are lower than that. So I'm helping the Medicare problem. And I think lowering it to 55 and having those people pay a premium will help the system. lowering it to 45 will help the system, but I think they have to pay a premium.
Well, what we're going to do is not call it a premium. All right. Right now, we heard from that woman, when people are paying a premium, I call it a tax for the insurance companies. All right, so what we're going to do is do away with premiums to the insurance companies and have people pay taxes. Healthcare is not free. I'm not here to suggest to anybody that miraculously everybody in America is going to health care. We don't have to pay for it. That's crazy. Of course you got to have to pay for it. But we pay for it in a progressive way. The way she described it is a total, really regressive and unfair way. Middle-class people paying a fortune out of their limited incomes on health care. The way we pay for it is in a progressive way. You're going to have to pay for it. No question about it. But it's going to be done in a way that exempts the first $29,000 of your income from taxation, and probably there'll be a 4% tax above that. So if you're making $60,000, you'll be paying about $1,200 based on $31,000 of taxable income. How's that? $1,200 for comprehensive health care covering all of your health care needs. Pretty good?
That's a good deal.
That is a great deal. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Misty? Poor Misty. See, this is our campaign manager here in Iowa.
Hi, Senator Sanders. I'm Maria Filippone. I love you.
Oh. But I'm married already. I appreciate that.
All that you stand for. I'm a physician by training. I retired from medicine right as I was starting my career to be a stay-at-home mother. There's two parts to this I want to bring up. I retired because I quit medicine because I would rather have stayed home with my child than dealt with all of the bureaucracy that goes along with practicing medicine. I love to serve people. I do that in many other ways in my life, but I could not stomach that. My husband and I both came out of medical school with about $500,000 in student debt, just from medical school, not undergrad. Also, so I would like you to maybe address that, the taking the profit out of the education and training. Also, during my training, I learned to do abortions. I agree it's a hard issue, tough, but it is a constitutional right for women to have reproductive freedom over their bodies. In this day and age, that is so under attack and so tenuous. What will you do to help ensure reproductive freedom?
Okay, you've asked three in your statement. All right. Excellent questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Number one, in terms of reproductive rights, I believe, as you do, that a woman's right to control her own body is a constitutional right, okay? And we will do everything we can to codify Roe v. Wade through legislation in the Congress. That's number one. Number two, here's a promise, take it to the bank. I will never, ever nominate anybody to the United States Supreme Court who is not 100% Roe v. Wade. Number two, you raised a very important issue as a physician, all right? Did everybody hear what I'm sorry, your first name is? Maria. Maria. Everybody hear what Maria said? Maria's a doctor. And she said that among other reasons, tell me if I'm wrong here, that she gave up the profession, and we desperately need doctors, is she was tired of dealing with the bureaucracy in the healthcare system, tired of arguing with insurance companies about what you could do for your patients, all right? All right? You want to practice medicine and help people, not spend half your life arguing with insurance companies. And this is a complaint that I have heard from many, many physicians, primarily primary care physicians, all across this country. They went to medical school because they want to serve people. Nothing more idealistic than that. And that's exactly what we need. And yet they are sick and tired of having to get approval for every drug every therapy from some insurance company bureaucrat, all right? And people get burned out in the process. And we're losing young physicians as well who get disillusioned about practicing medicine. Third point you make. And this applies to medical school, it applies to many other professions. You and your husband ended up with $500,000 in student debt. Now, when you end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt as a doctor, in many cases, probably not Maria, but in many cases, you're going to gravitate to those places and those professions where you can make a lot of money. So we have a real shortage in this country of family practitioners, primary care practitioners, especially in underserved rural areas, right? But if you go there, I don't know what you can make, depending on the state, depending on the location, maybe make $80,000, $100,000 a year. Well, you're not going to be paying off, hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt with that type of income. So people gravitate to other types of specialties where they can make $500,000 a year, not $100,000 a year. So what we believe is, number one, public colleges and universities should be tuition-free, including medical school. And by the way, as a result, I think, of some of the work that I and others have done, that message is getting out to medical schools. You may have noticed that in the last year, I think it was Cornell, maybe Columbia, NYU, have announced that those medical schools, great medical schools, will be tuition-free. People will not leave those schools with student debt. So we're making progress. But what we want is we need tens of thousands of physicians in this country, especially in underserved areas in rural America and in urban areas, okay? And it's hard to get them when people are struggling with those kinds of student debts. So we're going to make public colleges and universities tuition-free. We're going to cancel student debt. That's what we're going to do, all right? So I think you and I are in agreement on those three issues. All right, is Marty here? Do we have, there's Marty, all right.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. My name is Marty Larson. That's the reason this is the last one. Anyway, I appreciate the stories you've told here. I think a lot of us don't know about these stories until we actually hear them. It's like if it doesn't affect me, it doesn't exist, but it does. First of all, thank you for your sacrifice to the veterans. If not for you, we would not have the freedoms we have today, and that is to fight for this and fight an administration that's trying to take these things away from us that we do deserve. I shouldn't be here as I'm not a veteran. I registered for the draft in '73 and went through the lottery. However, they started pulling out of Vietnam at that time, so I did not serve. And I should not be here, but I am here for my father. My father, Minor Larson, a Korean veteran, he passed away at midnight Saturday. Now, he knew I was coming here. I'd committed. And he knew and understood why I fight with Bernie here, because these are our rights. I said, we have to stand up to what is right. He was taken to hospice Friday afternoon, yet he knew my passion to support Bernie was important. He and my mother discussed this race on many occasions. I did say my goodbyes before I left, and I did see him on a video phone call Saturday before he did pass away. And he was in Korea the night it ended, and that is the only story he really told me. It was a moonlit night, and 11 o'clock, for some reason, World War I, it's the 11th hour, the 11th day is when they stopped the wars. And he's a young 20-year-old man, and he says, I thought I was going to die. The barrage was just unbelievable. And you have to remember, in Korea, I think we dropped more ammunition or armament on that country than all of World War II. And so he said at 11 o'clock, dead silence. Moonlit night. MacArthur had told him that we were fighting Chinese. We were not. They said not. But he said thousands and thousands of them came out on the hillsides and the mountainsides that night. He said, I couldn't believe it. So he saw that. He did not take any VA benefits or participate in any VFW activities. And I think it was almost like he was ashamed by the way he was treated when he returned home. And that did not change until him and I went on the honor flight in Davenport, Iowa. And I'll tell you, his pride came back. He felt honored to have gone to the memorials and that, and it was. And he was thanked when he came back. And after that, boy, he wore that Korean hat all the time. And he was thanked many times in public. People would walk up and say, thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your service. And I told him, I fight now for what him and you veterans fought for then, to protect our rights as human beings, to have health care, to have a decent life when we retire. And that's what this is all about. And this man here is the one that will do it. Thank you.
Marty, thank you very, very much. We've gone over a lot of territory. Anybody have anything they wanted to? Yes, ma'am. Misty? Poor Misty. Where's Misty?
Senator, thank you so much for taking one last question. My name's Heather Ryan from Des Moines. I served during the Persian Gulf War. So I was in the Navy, and some of the best sailors that I worked with were very, very dedicated, aspiring Americans. And now we're deporting Navy military veterans, and it's a travesty. So as a senator and as president next year, do you vow that you will fight for all veterans, whether they are a citizen or not, and stop deporting U.S. military veterans?
Yes. Thank you. I have met those veterans, okay, and talked to them, and you're absolutely right. I mean, how cruel is it that when people put their lives on the line to defend us, then they are then deported? Yes, we will end that very ugly practice. Okay. All right. Okay, I see a hand here. Maybe this will be the last one. Young man right here. Yes, please.
Hello, okay. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm a senior in high school. My name's Abinadai. I'm born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa. And you asked about solutions earlier and all that, but I just wanted to give some context to my family story. My mom here is 49 years old. She's an immigrant from Honduras. My father's a little younger, and he's an immigrant from Colombia. They both work full-time, all the time, constantly doing the best for this country. My mom's a social worker, and my dad's a carpenter. We are on Medicaid, and we worry that next year when we're renewing it that we will no longer apply for it because there's one less family member in our family. And my dad's not offered insurance by his job, and my mom's is about $1,000 a month, and we can't afford that. And it's very
Your
worrisome.
mother's medical premium would be $1,000 a month, which would be roughly what percentage of her income, roughly?
It's about one check. She gets checks every 2 weeks. She makes $2,000 a month.
Okay.
And it's worrisome. My mom has cancer, or had cancer. She's good now, but it's always worrisome. My dad has cluster headaches, and they come in and out. And cluster headaches, for context, are worse than migraines significantly. And so it worries me because I have a younger brother. I worry about their health, and it also mine. I should be able to go see a doctor and all that, but oh my God, that's so gross. I'm so sorry. But I just wanted to give that context, and I'm glad you're fighting for that because that provides insurance for my family. My brothers who are older, who are no longer living with, deserve that, who work full-time. But you asked for a solution, and I always think that politics and legislative action is important, but what do you plan to do socially? Because I know that for me personally, I'm going to college next year and I want to work for nonprofits. I want to maybe go into therapy to work with people who are in need. What do you think we should do as a country, as a society, to help our senior citizens?
First of all, I'm sorry, your name is? Therma. Yes. You should be very proud of this young man.
I am.
And thank you for raising that question. And once again, we're talking about a struggling family being asked to pay far more for health care than they can afford to pay. But here's what I think. Thank you very much for the question. Two things. Number one, today on Veterans Day especially, we remember the men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend us, to defend American democracy. And that means that participating in the political process is something that you have an obligation to do. It's not so, oh, well, maybe I'll vote, maybe I won't, maybe I'll find out what's going on, maybe I won't. That is your job as a citizen. People have died to make sure that our country is run by ordinary people, not a king, not a queen, or a handful of billionaires, all right? So you and your generation have got to accept that responsibility. But also, kind of as Maria was saying a moment ago, there is an enormous amount of work to be done in this country so that we can better serve each other, all right? You talk about maybe going into counseling. Was that what one of the options you looked? We desperately need psychologists, psychiatrists, child psychiatrists. My God, there's a real gap there. We have an opioid epidemic, all right? We have an aging population, so we need a huge number of people to get involved in that area. We have a child care crisis in this country. I want young people to be able to work at decent compensation with the littlest kids in this country who are the future of America. So we need great teachers in this country, and we got to honor our teachers, and we got to pay them according to the important work that they are doing. All right, we have to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. Roads and bridges and water systems. Here in Iowa, you got a problem. We need thousands of workers to help us do that in all capacities of work. We have to deal with the existential threat of climate change and transform our energy system, all right? So we need you and your generation to help us not only retrofit buildings, transform our energy system, help us with sustainable energies like wind and solar and geothermal. You got to save the planet. That's what your generation has got to do. And my job as president is to make sure that those jobs are out there and that people receive the kind of compensation they deserve for doing that important work. So bottom line, to answer your question, you and your generation must be involved heavily in the political process. Don't leave it to a handful of billionaires. And second of all, there is an enormous amount of work to do to improve lives for millions of people. Let's do it. So I want to thank all of you for being here. And I have the feeling we just touched the surface, just scratched the surface. And I know there are others of you, I'm sorry, we didn't have more time. And again, on Veterans Day, we want to thank the incredibly brave men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend us. As former chairman of the Veterans Committee, I know, because I've talked to countless veterans, the sacrifices that not only the veterans have made, their families and their children have made, all right? And their mothers have made, and their fathers have made, all right? And we will not forget that sacrifice. And to all of you who have shared your stories today about what a dysfunctional and cruel healthcare system is doing to you, I want you to know that you're speaking for millions and millions and millions of people. What you're talking about is the reality of what's going on in this country. So together, we are going to take on, to answer your question, I have no doubt that the insurance companies and drug companies, they have all of the money they need. They will lie, they will put ads on, they will do everything they can to protect their profits. But at the end of the day, this system is so cruel, it is so dysfunctional that the American people are seeing through those lies. We're going to prevail, and the day is going to come sooner or later, and it's going to come sooner, when health care will be a human right for every man, woman, and child in this country. So thank you all very much for being here.